prioritize what really moves your heart.
Yeah.
Period. If it moves your heart, you will stay involved and your process will be freaking amazing.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 136. Total episodes number 228. This is one of the most powerful podcasts that I've had. I don't take these kind of podcasts, these episodes for granted. I don't ever take the guest's time for granted, but this one was just so saturated with knowledge. I was just mesmerized by the amount of self-reflection that this individual has had through his life. Admittedly, he's done some things that he hasn't been proud of, but he's been able to look inside within himself and continue to grow and better himself and literally the world around him because of that raw vulnerability that he describes in this episode. So my guest today is the one and only Jeff Nichols, and I was absolutely honored to be able to speak with him and to learn from him today. It was really special. He said some things that are going to stick with me for a long time and to the rest of my life, I'll be honest with you. So this one hit me hard. Is really good. I can't wait to share it with you. Remember, you can find this episode and all other conversations and the contemplation episodes on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can head over to YouTube and actually watch the podcast, which is really, really cool. And I think that is a special aspect of the podcast, is to be able to do that. So head over to YouTube, subscribe as well. And like I said, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. This was a good one. You're probably going to want to listen to it twice. I guarantee you that. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks. It's really fun talking with you already off camera. We're talking about Colorado, which I'm obviously from. And I said where I was from. You actually knew where it was. And that blows me away because it's this tiny 6,500 person town up in above the clouds. So love Colorado. Love having you on here. Absolutely honored. Been looking forward to it. But before we get into the rest of the episode, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself and for some of the guests that maybe don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick sort of synopsis of my life. Grew up in a very small town in Iowa. Went away to college as a college athlete. Probably like many of us that served, there was just this calling, we'll call it, right? That I think is very reminiscent, which is why there's so many former athletes that joined the military, right?
Yeah.
There is that. I think that for me, there was this internal, the job isn't quite done being a teammate. You know, like you get done playing sports and I'm young and I had some things I wanted to do, something, you know, that calling that's bigger than me. I spent 11 years in the Navy, all that time in the SEAL teams, had, as far as a career goes and timing and whatnot, it could not have been better.
Sure.
I had the people that were my leaders, that were my mentors, were as good as they come. Wow. And I don't really have any regrets from that world. Like there's some things that certainly have been said or done that we're all kind of not super proud of, but at the point it made me who I am. Through that whole time as a college, I was an exercise physiologist. When I left college, it was always something that my free time was spent doing that, which was very little free time in total, but my free time was still teaching and coaching exercise physiology and training. And then having that unique background as an exercise physiologist and a SEAL at the same time, it made my training better. It made like that perspective is really quite priceless. Mm-hmm. So with the years of combat that I saw, plus the exercise physiology and trying to keep myself and others put together, when I got out, my mistake, but what a beautiful mistake it was. I focused a lot on pro athletes and going down that road. And
sure.
Because there are some similarities in that, but it didn't fulfill me. Mm-hmm. So I stepped away from athletics and began to focus 100% of my time on active duty folks, military, law enforcement, and fire, as well as I have some select athletes I still train with, but it's quite a process to get my
Sure.
time if you're a pro athlete, because I really like spending my time with law enforcement and fire because I understand them and they understand me, and it's been really good. It's been a great journey the last couple of years.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That last bit you said is really important and something that resonates with me as well with this podcast. When I started almost 2 years ago now, I was kind of everywhere, like talking to any kind of person, trying to help any other person. And as much as I like that, and there's a lot of good in that, I resonate a lot with people that have a military background and things like that. So I kind of guided down and I guess niche down to being able to help people transfer out of the military and to kind of answer a little bit of a question for new listeners and for yourself is why am I even doing this? Is because I want to talk to as many different people as I can from different types of backgrounds that are integrating into doing new careers, whether it's military transition or whether it's one career to another career kind of transition. And it's really cool that you said you were going to school while you're active duty in the military, which is not always the easiest thing to do, especially with the profession that you were at. Obviously, it's high speed. There's not a lot of time. You're either deployed or you're training and you're gone a lot. So to be able to do that, I think is a really great thing to take away already for myself and for the listeners is if you really do want to do something, you're going to find a way to do it. And that's exactly what you did there. So that's really cool. And I love how it was interesting because you said you worked with a lot of pro athletes and then now who you're working with now. And I think that's really special as well. So one of the questions I was thinking about as you were talking is like what is one of the most powerful or cool or awesome one of the lessons that you've learned from just being a coach in that respect for not for the pro athletes, but for just working with human beings?
Yeah, I think one of the things, there's many things we could talk about, but the one that probably stands out most to me about this is that if you look at this, the organizations that you and I are associated with, and many of the military organizations, many of the law enforcement organizations, firefighters, right? You have this precise, concise skill that is necessary for that job. Like it's real concise, it's precise. It's, whether it's like, I'm a sniper instructor, I'm a master breacher, I'm a master naval parachutist, the list goes on and on. And I only say that because those are precise sort of skills. Those are very precise skills that demand focus. They demand a certain level of physicality, right? That is a common thread across the board in military, law enforcement, and fire. It's precise, right? Even a common traffic stop these days is no longer common. And so my thing is that because I was taught by so many great, experts, real experts in those precise manners, in the same way in college, right? I was a college baseball player. I was a strength coach in college, and I learned that concise, precise directive. So what I've done is going, okay, well, not that there's not enough people training other people. What I think that the military and law enforcement and fire does really well is take on concise, precise information. So what I do, instead of being very general about what I do in training, I'm very specific about the individuals, and I practice and I very much preach being like in a constant state of assessment, right? Always be aware of what you're doing, your movement patterns, the choices you make to impact negatively or positively your training, your life. And I think that, and this has nothing to do with general fitness against them, but people that just want to go to the gym every day, awesome. But for our military, for our law enforcement, for our firefighters, I think they, number one, deserve very precise, concise information that will help them, because I think it's a moral obligation. I very much believe it's a moral obligation to have a certain state of readiness, of physicality, okay, and intellect. And that is what our military special operations do better than anyone else. It is reproducing, distributing information that is reproducible, reliable, it's predictable, and it can be taught. And that is why our military special operations are so good. And so I take that same mentality of teaching precise and concise information on the physical training side, because they demand it, they need it, and they deserve it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. And it's true. It's very true that you do that. I picked up on one of the things you said, not in this last bit, but in the earlier bit about not being fulfilled. And to me, that struck a certain chord. You weren't fulfilled by doing that, but you were speaking of what again got me. You said, always be aware of what you're doing. So in that first conversation, you were saying, I wasn't fulfilled. So it sounds like you were somehow aware that you weren't doing it, because I think some people just continue doing it regardless. They think it's cool. I don't even have the power to be able to change it, maybe. So how were you able to recognize that you weren't fulfilled and then actually be able to take actionable items or actionable steps to be able to find something that really did fulfill you?
Yeah, I think certainly there's an amount of initial introspection that has to happen. Like,
Sure.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that forced humility upon me by my bad decisions, we'll say.
Yeah.
Like, we can say that, but to the point of positivity, I realized something that was given to me as a child, that was fostered as a child, that was continued to be fostered throughout the military, and was creativity. It's being thinking outside the box, but being aware of it, right? And so what I mean by that is, okay, I felt my best when I'm progressing. And I'm progressing in life, in my profession, when I'm learning new things, whether it's being taught to me directly or I'm learning to improve my current knowledge by teaching to others. So either way, there's progress, and it's information, it's learning based. And with all respect, truly, to my former business that I had sold a couple of years ago now, like 4 or 5 years ago, a training facility that really was focusing on youth athletes in the area. Amazing facility, amazing coaches, amazing everything that I was part of. But what I was finding out is I was not progressing. I didn't feel like I was emotionally progressing. I didn't feel like I was progressing in my information and my education. And the reason why is because, again, with respect to youth athletes, you can only take on so much information as a child, neurologically and physiologically. You can only learn so much. But as an adult, a special operator, a SWAT officer, a firefighter, paramedic, where they are very used to that, hey, you need to learn and understand this information so well you can teach it, so you can save lives, you can save others. And I just needed information. I needed to learn. I wasn't progressing. It wasn't fulfilling, not because I wasn't impacting people,
Okay.
but I didn't feel like I was impacting people to my best ability. Like it wasn't the right population for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that for me took a bit to realize that it's like I was stagnant and I just was unhappy with it. And when I stepped out of that and got back involved with, the tactical population, and I saw people's hunger for information, it forced me to be a better teacher. Because I could show up with a bunch of 12, 13-year-old volleyball players and kind of just go through the motions, and they're still going to get better. But, man, you know the deal. The tactical population is going to challenge you. They're going to challenge your information. Absolutely. They're going to challenge your knowledge. You're going to challenge your background. And they're going to challenge your resolve. And they should, because they deserve it. They deserve a teacher out there giving them the absolute best. And so, for me, man, it was very reminiscent of teaching CQB and other things. And I just loved it. It made me better. It made me a better operator. Like, teaching the tactical population has made me a much better person and a much better coach.
That's so good. And that's one of the things that I love, also hearing common topics or common answers, but in totally different careers. And one of the things is teaching made me better, essentially, is what you said, because it forces you to learn it. And that's one of the best things, best piece of advice that I've heard throughout. And it's common because of people like yourself that want the best for themselves and want the best for the people that they're teaching. They understand that, but it only comes with that self-reflection that you said about, well, I'm not fulfilled, but it's not just because of these reasons, it's because of these reasons. But you're able to recognize that within yourself and then actually be able to take those actionable steps like we were talking about earlier. So I think that is a really special thing to take away already, because like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, not everybody can be cognizant of that. But I would hope by listening to this podcast, by listening to this conversation that I call them, it's my hope to be able to encourage the conversation or spark the conversation in other people to be able to have those kind of thoughts in your head. Like, if you're listening to this stuff, cool. We're saying some good stuff. Jeff is saying incredible information, but don't just walk away from here and be like, that was fun. That was good value or good entertainment value. But like, actually think about it to yourself, like do something about it. And it reminds me of one of the things, I had Nick Kamalosis on here a little while ago. I can't remember when, but you guys both posted that podcast that you were on. And one of the things I wrote down here, quoting you, the commonality between all of your misfortunes is you. And I was like, that kind of reminds me of like you're being honest as all hell with yourself And that to me resonated very deeply. And it was really, really special again for me to hear that of you. But I think that's really hard to be that honest with yourself and then actually move on and do something with that information. So I just wanted to point that out. If you guys haven't listened to that podcast, go ahead and check it out. The next thing I wanted to touch on was, and it was hard to hear because we've all had really hard thoughts, but you said you were so low in your life that you had beginning setting up your power of attorney. And to me, that was very, very vulnerable thing to say, but it's because you said you weren't loving yourself for the good that you've done, and you realize that. So once you came to this conclusion, how did you begin to actually be happier in the moment and actually implement this stuff? And you're able to continue to help people and yourself, obviously, but how did you kind of start down that journey after all those realizations?
Yeah, I think that, for me, I certainly can only speak to my personal experiences.
Sure.
I found that, I had a couple low points in my life. I was pretty opiate addicted. I was opiate addicted. No one gave it to me.
Yeah.
That's on me. Not the Navy, not the teams, nothing. That was me. So a lot of these things, these common threads, like I said, is, when you hit bottom, you have two options. You're looking up or you give up. That's it, right? You look up to a higher power, whatever that is to you. It doesn't even have to be a deity. Just it is, right? It's just up. Or you just keep continuing the path of self-implosion. And, there's a lot of things that, I could speak on that got me to this point, that got me through it, these sort of things. But, that common thread, as we talked about, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to actually take responsibility for the negative in your life. But what I can encourage people to do is, I use the context of like a rear view mirror or a car. Okay. You can spend your entire time driving, looking in the rear view mirror at the problems behind you. It's going to create a lot of problems in front of you because you're going to lose focus what's really important.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the problem. Like, fear, anxiety. Fear is one of those things that it comes from only a couple places, in my opinion. It comes from lies in your past that you're still having to deal with because you perpetuated lies, small lies, big lies, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all lies, right? And then creates anxiety in front of you because you never know where you're going to encounter those lies again. All you can do is tell the truth. And that's one of the things that I really came across a couple years ago when I was getting through this. Is like, the one thing that will always set you free is being truthful. There's two people, whether you believe in God or not, there's two people you can't lie to. You can't lie to yourself and you can't lie to God. Right. And once you realize and this is like, these are things right out of Dr. Jordan Peterson, that's like, you cannot clean up all your messes that you think are catastrophic until you really clean up the small things in your life right now, and I took this thing on board. Now, I'm an extremely OCD type person. I'm not someone that's going to change one variable at a time in his life, good or bad or indifferent. That's just the way I'm wired. And so in the process of climbing out of the depths of my own self-loathing, one of the biggest things that I found that was able to continue the path of progression, we'll call it, like, and even to this day, was what a wonderful feeling that the people that are closest to you trust you. And that's the one thing I didn't ever have, right? I didn't really ever have that. And this is kind of like the culmination of that story was, as a child, I had a lot of friends, whatever, no big deal. I was so hyper focused on what I wanted to do as a young kid, wanted to play professional baseball. I kind of just stopped making friends at about 16. Wow. I just really did. Not that I didn't have friends. I grew up in a small town, but it's like, okay, I go from a parochial situation of high school and an athlete. I go to a junior college powerhouse to play baseball, right? It's more severe parochial. In my personal choice, right? Then I go to a Division I college, live more severe parochial, away from home. Then I joined the military, even more severe parochial. Then I joined Special Forces, more parochial, and then I go on to the next Tier 1 unit, even more severely parochial. And one thing I realized I hadn't done for a long, long time was really, really developed for friendships, right? I really hadn't done that. Like, really, because it's like, it's like fraternity to fraternity. I jumped from one fraternity to the next and to the next and to the next. Now, granted, I had friends, but you just get them. You don't even have to try for them. You just get them. And when I got out of the military, man, like I had no social skills.
Wow.
Like I really did not have good social skills. And so my point is I didn't have a lot of people that I could really lean on that I trusted, not because they weren't trustworthy, but because I had kept myself so closed off and so emotionally protected because I thought that was going to make me vulnerable and weak. Because vulnerability in my head is couple things. I learned for whatever reason, not from my family, but I created this alter ego where I thought subjective people were weak because subjective people are kind, caring, right? They're charismatic. They have personalities. To me, it just seemed weak, right? Sure. It's like, oh, like they have friends and they're exposed and all this thing. So objective people, yes, no, do it now. Don't ever do that. That was objectivity. So I focused on being an objective person because it was a matter of control. I realized that after trying to create all this control in my life, I lost control.
Wow.
I had nobody around me at all that really cared about me because I didn't trust anyone. I didn't start to develop any trust.
Wow.
And so that was a big one for me, is start surrounding myself with people that I cared about. And I was consistent at telling them that I cared about them. I was happy for them. And like, what a concept now. It's like when my friends, like Mitch Aguiar, who is like quite honestly one of my closest friends, like when he had a fight this weekend, one of his pro fights, and I jumped out of my seat, excited and happy, and I was so happy for the man. Like I have never done that. Even all the years I played baseball, you know, wow. Like I was in my own head.
Yeah.
And you know, whether it's family, it's my loved ones, like Catherine, my better half, my girlfriend is like the most amazing human being I've ever met. And it's really, really nice to be happy, to be thankful for other people and tell them, my son, my family. And it's, you know, again, and I'll close it with this, like, that was my choice. I was like that when I was in the military because I felt that I needed to protect my emotions for whatever reason because I didn't think vulnerability was strength. And I'll tell you right now that the strongest I've ever been in my life is right now emotionally. And it's because I'm not afraid of like what the word vulnerability even means necessarily. Sure. Man, that's strength. Vulnerability is strength as far as I'm concerned. And that's my message.
That is powerful. That last couple minutes is really powerful. I would encourage you to rewind that. And I cannot wait to hear that again. That was really powerful. And the vulnerability, you're true. Once you can accept that, there's so much truth in that.
Untouchable.
You are untouchable. And I've found that to be a difficulty for me as well. Putting myself out here on 200 Plus podcast has been really vulnerable, sharing a little bit about my background as an RTO, as a comms guy, doing all that kind of stuff is something I never wanted to share. And the more I shared it, it resonates a little bit about what you said about not having a lot of friends. Like, I'm a friendly person, but we're all these people that I can lean on, and some of them aren't there. And there's reasons some people aren't there. But to be able to recognize in that self, I think that's the common theme of this conversation with you. There's a lot of great points, but one of the common themes is just the sheer amount of self-reflection that you are doing within your life, and everything is just building upon the next or the last thing and the last thing and the last thing into the next thing and the next thing. And I think, like I said earlier, that is really special, but it's hard to do because, again, like
it's extremely hard to do. Yeah.
You know,
because it's practice, you know,
yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Behavior, you know, to create a routine of behavior, you have to practice it, good or bad, right? And I mean, I had never practiced being legitimately friendly, all those sort of things, even though I certainly had the capacity to be.
Sure. Yeah. It is weird. We do have the capacity, and that's one of the points I love driving home as well. Is a lot of times I saw it in myself. I sell myself short, and that kind of coincides with me thinking I don't have the capacity to do certain things, especially these soft skills that you just need to go out there and do it. Like I did something at work today, like literally today on this recording where I've never done before. And I was terrified about how are they going to perceive me? Am I going to do my job like I should? And I got done with it. And I was like, why did you even have those thoughts? So even just daily things, we need to have these conversations with ourselves. And like I said, the common theme is at least having Yeah, okay, I want to start the conversation. Great, but start the conversation with yourself first to be able to recognize these things, and then
You
come
bet.
come at peace with them to a certain level, and then work on them, accept them, and work on them. And I think as long as you are taking those forward steps to work on those things that you've identified, then you have to pat yourself on the back and give yourself credit for taking
It's
steps in that
okay,
forward
right? It
direction.
really,
Yeah,
what a concept is. Like the first person, and this is like, my girlfriend is this is, she says all the time, she's like, how could you ever expect to show compassion to a stranger if you
yeah,
can't show compassion for yourself?
yeah,
And that concept to me was like, it really seems at first, like my old Jeff would have been like, that seems so selfish.
yeah,
Team gear comes before, like all
yeah.
that
Well,
stuff.
that's
It's
how
like,
you're trained.
but
Yeah,
it doesn't, but we're talking emotional health here.
sure,
Like really, like
sure.
it's what a strange thing where, because here's what I also believe. There's two things, like fear no longer exists if you don't lie, because any perception that you get based on you, it's other
Mm,
people's insecurities. If you're telling the truth, any negative feedback you get, any any naysayers,
mm,
anything that comes towards you that is not truthful about you, it doesn't matter, because it
wow.
isn't about you. It's someone else's projection of their own insecurities. And that only comes, fear only comes, is perpetuated with the lies that we persist.
Wow.
If you don't lie, you don't have any fear.
That's
and
powerful.
and that's one of those things that, like, I remind myself that all the time. Truth, the cliches make sense. Truth will set you
Yeah.
free. Absolutely, that does, right? But it then is practicing those truths, the small truths. And that was one of those hard things I had doing, is like, for some reason my ego felt like I need to exacerbate the truths.
Mm,
If someone would say, like I've said in other podcasts, like, hey Jeff, what do you do for a living? Oh, I train this, that, and the other. I work with professional athletes. Like, it doesn't matter, right?
mm,
Any details beyond that, right? Because of me, I had to like inflate my own ego to
yeah.
make me feel good.
Yep.
Other people were satisfied with the answer, but
Yeah.
I wasn't, for some reason.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
that's common. I've done
Yeah.
I've probably done that my entire life, and it takes like you said, it takes a lot of practice be able to, because sometimes I don't know about you or anybody else listening, but I'll just say it and I won't even realize that I'm saying it, and then later I'll be like, oh my god, I sounded that took it too far. I was like gloating or whatever, and I don't
Yeah.
really necessarily mean it in the moment, but that's what it was. And you're right, and that's some of the things you said. Like, again, even with this podcast, we're speaking about our personal experiences. It's like I've said certain things about myself, about my career, and I've had people chastise me for that, and I've had people say certain things, and I'm like, listen, man, I know what I lived, I know what I've done, so it's good to be able to hear somebody say that, like hear you say that to me right now, because this podcast is for me too. Like I've said it a million
Yeah,
times.
it's
Like,
cathartic for you as
yeah,
well. Like,
absolutely.
it's like my girlfriend last night was leading me through my meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit me after we got done. I was like, you know what? I bet it was equally like effective for you to
Sure.
guide me through it.
Sure.
And it's like, well, that makes sense, because we talked about being a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Teacher is progress. Being a teacher is
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
And teaching, ask any teacher, like, who do you like teaching? The students that love to be taught. Right? What a concept. And that's what the military and law enforcement law is especially special operations population, is they want to learn more because that gives them an advantage.
Absolutely. 100%. It 100% does. That's such a good thing. One of the things I want to talk about here is a newer segment on the podcast where I jump over to Instagram and had somebody, I put out a sticker 24 hours in advance if you're listening, and you can ask a question to the guest. So I'm going to hop over here real quick and select one of the answers, or one of the questions. And the question is, what have you struggled with in staying authentic to your mission while growing your business?
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. That's actually that's
That's
been a topic for a while now, because
okay.
so Catherine is also my business manager. And so on that topic, it's with what I'll speak to what with me specifically,
Sure.
obviously,
Yeah.
because that's the question. The answer to the question is, it's complex, but it's simple, is that if you know what you're doing is correct, like right by people, right? Like my business, in a very nutshell answer, is I train the tactical population physically. Okay. That's enough. That's the point. It's like, sometimes what you're doing is just enough. Like, I don't need to be distracted by the shiny balls, by university, this calling me and protein calling me and this, that, like, you come do this. I'm like, oh, I have to do podcasts. I have to do this. I have to do that. No. Like, prioritize what really moves your heart.
Yeah.
Period. If it moves your heart, you will stay involved. Okay. And your process will be freaking amazing. Don't be distracted by what the world says you need to be. What your heart says you need to be that, right? Listen to your gut, listen to it. Right. And I think that's the thing, is like, if each person were to give their all, truly give their love, their compassion, all these things to who they're getting, especially for us, right? It's easier for us to do this because we can directly engage with the people that are supporting us, right? If, in its own way, if you're working, like my sister has a very high-end corporate job, and she's dealing with politics and these sort of things, in her own way, she's got to find that process that appeases her.
Sure.
But for those of us that are veterans, for those of us who own our own businesses, for those of us that are in school trying to learn the things we love and we're passionate about, that is the process. That is a successful process. And if you're telling the truth and you're doing everything you can by yourself and by others, you will be successful, right? You absolutely, especially for you veterans that know, right, that you understand that doing X, Y, and Z will lead to A, right? And that's, I say, whatever, like at the end of buds, what do you get? You get SEALs. Why? Because the process works every single time. Right? At the end of Ranger School, what do you get? Rangers. Why? Because that process has been forged time and time again, and it's proven that every single time you're going to spit out some Rangers. Some good, some bad. Same with SEALs. Some good, some bad. I don't mean good, bad. I just mean that different levels of expertise will bloom from that.
Sure.
Okay, so if we use that same process, why? Like, focus on the process. Okay. Don't focus on the end result. Don't think, if I do all these sort of things, I'm going to get X. No. If you do all the things in order, whatever that means, the right things, tell the truth, do the next right thing. Like my counselor says, once you've done the next right thing, do the next right thing, and then do the next right thing. What's going to happen? You are going to be one happy person. That's what's going to be happening. And you're going to impact so many people positively. You're going to be a better father, better mother, better husband, better boyfriend, better parent in every way. And then you can look back at your service and go, you know what? I may not have agreed with everything that my mission and my command and my leadership wanted me to do, but I do it with a clean heart and a clean soul. And I love my brothers and I love my country. And that's what's important, is doing the right thing and not deviating from it because somebody else thinks that you should do something else. Do what your heart compels you to do.
God, that is really good, Jeff. Thank you. That is incredible. This has been an insanely good experience for me. I know for people listening, there's a lot of good information in here. I'm always so excited to re-listen to these podcasts while I edit them and just honestly just listen to it over and over again. It's been really good. It's been really enjoyable. Before we get out of here, what's the best way that people can contact you if they so choose to?
Yeah, the best way to kind of track down the information I'm putting out, Instagram. I'm moderately active on Instagram. Jeff CSCS is my handle there. If you need to engage with me, want to engage with some information, go to my website, email me from there. All the emails that come in, if they're concisely written to a degree, especially if you're active duty military fire, please, or you're in a selection process, we get to all those. And I say we, because again, my better half has been coaching and teaching for 20 years as well.
Oh, wow.
She speaks the same language I do, but the only thing I need to involve her in is some of the acronyms that I'm still confused or trying to learn too,
Sure.
right? Or I've forgotten, but everything gets answered. Okay. And like I do in-person training, I have training online, video, all that sort of stuff. Because what I'm trying to do is, without sounding arrogant, and that's fine if I do. What I do, I'm good at what I do because I love what I do. And fortunately enough, I've gotten the knowledge. I've been people that have cared enough about me, even through my times of being a jerk, I've had enough people, teachers and mentors that have loved me and cared enough about me to share information that now I'm entrusted to share it with you all.
Yeah.
That's what, at the end of the day, I'm a teacher. If nothing else on this world that I have when I leave a legacy behind, it's information that can help save people's lives. Okay, and that's all I'm trying to do. And that's what my website, which is performancefirstus.com, that's what my mission is.
Hell yeah. I love that. And I just prioritize what moves your heart. That was one of my favorite. I mean, I liked everything about this podcast, but that was one of the quotes that stayed with me. Prioritize what moves your heart. I think that's very special. That's something, again, that I've had to do recently between, day job, podcast, family, being a new father, she's almost 1 year old. So it's been nuts. I was trying to put a diaper on a honey badger before I came up here for this one. Yeah. So she's like, I'm just trying not to have this little kid just head first dive off the changing table. So no, I know that, that's been really powerful for me. And this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for being here. This was a really great episode yet again. Absolutely honored to have you on here, and have a great rest of your night.
I appreciate you having me. We'll talk again soon.
All right. See ya.